Currently at the office of Mr. Owusu Keja, who is the Chief Census Methodologist at the Ghana Statistical Service. And we are basically here to engage with him to find out from him how ready, in terms of preparation, the service is ahead of the 2021 population and housing census. Good afternoon, Mr. Owusu Keja, and thanks so much for having us in your office to talk about all this important conversation.
Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon to your team and your cherished viewers. We are very much grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. So even before we get into the preparation that you've put in place ahead of the 2021 population and housing census, we would like to find out from you what your role as a Chief Census Methodologist is.
Well, thank you so much. So the census is being organized around a number of teams. So we are talking about a team that is in charge of maps, which we call them GIS West Stream, that is Geographic Information System West Stream. We also have a team that is in charge of finance and logistics methodology as a West Stream. So basically, our West Stream happens to be the team that is coordinating all the other West Streams to make sure that we succeed as one family. And I happen to lead the team that is in charge of this coordination, and that's why I'm referred to as the Chief Census Methodologist.
That's great. So anytime an agency is about to embark on this very important exercise, the question that is on the mind of the Ghanaian is that how ready are they in conducting a very peaceful and successful? The big questions in the minds of Ghanaians: how ready is the Ghana Statistical Service in terms of preparation ahead of the 2021 population and housing census?
Thank you very much. We are very much ready. So in terms of preparation, let me say that we started planning for the census way back in 2018. And basically the key activity that we undertook was the demarcation of the country into enumeration areas. So what we usually do is to divide the country into smaller areas, and that is what I refer to as the enumeration areas, so that we assign each of the enumerators, the officers that are going to collect the data for us, to each of the areas. And so they come up with a map, they delineate the area, come up with a map, and clearly describe the boundary of this area, so that each person, when assigned, will be able to know exactly where to work within the enumeration period. And so that has been done already. And talking about procurement of logistics, PPPs, because of COVID, the tablets, and provisioning of the tablets. When I talk about provisioning, we are talking about making sure that we put all our materials, instruments, questionnaires, and all the material resources that are needed by the enumerators on the tablets. These have been done. We have sent these logistics to the districts. The activity is happening within the districts. We're talking about 272 statistical districts. And all these materials have been sent there. And the other key activity that I can talk about is training. We had about 4 levels of training. We did 3 levels of training of trainers. And so we had training for our master trainers, who then trained our national trainers. And the national trainers also subsequently trained regional trainers. And the regional trainers also trained the enumerators and supervisors. The training of the enumerators and supervisors started on the 1st of this month. And today, 11th of June, is when we are ending this training. Now, when we end this training, we give ourselves a day to clean our tablets. You know, they went for field practice, and so you have field practice data on the tablets, and so we need to clean that data from the tablets. And then from the 13th to 25th of this month, we then start the first major activity as far as field data collection is concerned, which is listing of structures. And so we are very much ready. As I said, training is ending today, and then the trainers will then put the successful trainees into groups, and that will be the beginning of the start of field work.
Even before you get into the listing of structures and the other structures that you speak, how many enumeration areas do we have in the country right now?
Okay, so we have close to 52,000 enumeration areas. And so we are making use of roughly 70,000 enumerators and supervisors. So we are working with about 58,000 enumerators and about 12,000 supervisors. And so 52,000 against 58,000 people that we are engaging. And it's all because apart from the enumeration area that we assign some people to work, we also have people who are found in institutions. And in these institutions, we also have to send some of the enumerators to be able to cover the population we find in these institutions. And talking about institutions, I'm referring to all the places that people reside there as a group. For instance, you talk about secondary schools. You know, you have some students who are in the boarding schools, and that is where they live. And so we are not going to leave them out. We collaborate with the headmasters and also enumerate these people. It's not only secondary schools. You could even have pupils in primary or basic schools who are also in boarding households. We cover all of them. You have people in prisons. We will go to the prisons and make sure that we cover all of them. The tertiary institutions, hospitals, and all these hotels are also places that we will visit and make sure that we cover all the people who may be found there. And so that is why, apart from the 52,000 who will be manning our enumeration areas, we're also having additional numbers to cover these other groups of population.
So we talk about training of these enumerators. How much of a training have they received? Because in terms of collecting data from people, it becomes very tedious. Some people of the perception that they cannot give out certain information easily. And in terms of even allowing some of these enumerators into their homes, it becomes a challenge. So how much of a training have they received in order for them to overcome some of these impediments as and when it comes up?
You are right, and thank you for the question. In most of the cases, some people have the notion that census is just about a count of 1, 2, 3. But as you rightly put it, it goes beyond that. And so our training even begins with what you call community entry. You need to properly enter the community. You cannot just go to a particular locality and start speaking to the people. You have people who are responsible for these people. I'm talking about our chiefs, and you cannot go to this locality without even speaking to them, without they not knowing what you are there about. The assembly members are there, the key opinion leaders are there, and you need to properly enter into the community to let them know your mission and your vision. Apart from that, you need to also properly enter into people's homes. And so how do you conduct yourself in order to elicit the right information? It will not be proper for you to just start taking the GPS coordinates, for instance, of the structures. You may be mobbed, if people are not too sure what you are doing. They may take you to be a thief, for instance. And so we teach them all these. And then also the map that I talk about, each one is being given a map to indicate which area that is assigned to him or her. And sometimes it's not easy for people to read maps. And that is why even in addition to the map that we have supplied them, we are also giving a description of the area. And so we teach them how they will be able to read the map and be able to identify the area assigned so that no single enumerator will stray into another's. Then we are using different questionnaires to enumerate different types of population. Remember, I talked about prisons, the population in prisons. I talked about the population in schools. I talked about the population in hospitals. I talked about population in hotels, and then the population in homes. And there need to be clear strategies of enumerating all these people. And we have also designed different questionnaires to target each one of these population groups. And so we need to take them through all these to be able to get the right data for us. Quite apart from that, the questions that are in the questionnaires itself, it's also important that they understand the questions and be able to ask them the questions as they are in order not to change the meanings of the questions. In particular, we realize that not all the interviewees are going to be in the English language as the questions have been put, but then in most cases will be asking the questions in the local languages, Chi, Ga, Ewe, Dagbani, Dagare, and so on and so forth. And so it is important that all of us in the field are asking the questions the way it is. Even if you want to paraphrase, you are not changing the meaning of the question. And so we take them through all these. And then the other thing I want to mention in relation to this is the fact that we are using tablets. And so the way you find the questionnaire on paper as designed is not how it appears in the tablet. And so we need to take them through how they will use these tools to be able to elicit the right responses for us. We talk about their safety, and these are the things that we also, we are not only interested in the data, but we are also interested in their safety as well. We are in the COVID era, and we so much wish that none of them will, at the end of the day, will come back with problems. And talking about security, we are also looking at places that may pose some security threat. And so we teach them all these so that at the end of the day, we will get our data, and in addition to that, we will not get any information that even one of them, had or we had a casualty. Apart from that, we also expect quality data from the field, and so we have the supervisors who are supposed to monitor the work in the field and make sure that the enumerators are doing the needful. And therefore, apart from the general training that we have given all of them, we also have a slot on the timetable where we separate the supervisors and give them special trainings as to specifically what they are supposed to do to make sure that they supervise properly and get us the right information.
You mentioned obtaining quality data. What exactly do you mean by quality data in this situation?
Yeah, so if you talking about the 2021 population and housing census, we're looking at two main objectives. One is making sure that we get comprehensive, complete data. What that means is that each individual, provided you spend a census night on the bounds of Ghana, on the census night, which I will talk about later, should be enumerated. And so we say, don't leave anyone behind. And that is why our slogan says that you count, get counted. And so it is important that we get everybody on board so that we get 100% coverage. The other objective is what I talk about, the quality data. And so here we mean getting data that reflects the reality on the ground. For instance, we know that in some cases you find few people who have challenges with getting to know their right ages. And so sometimes you ask a simple question, how old are you? The person doesn't know his date of birth. And it begins with a sorry. I was born at a time when Nkrumah had been overthrown and stuff like that. And so we trained our enumerators to be able to get the right information in terms of age from this story that the person talks about. And so we talking about getting data or information that reflects the reality on the ground, such that you don't just give any information at all, but then gives us something that at the end of the day will be credible for decision making to be relied on.
You spoke about conducting a paperless census, that is the use of tablet. I want to find out from you what really went into the recruitment of these officers, because if they are not too much IT inclined, it will become difficult for them to operate some of these gadgets that you'll be giving to them. So what exactly went into the recruitment? Were they special people that were were they given special preferences in terms of the recruitment, or anybody at all can be recruited and be trained?
Right. So because of the shift from use of paper, we advertised. So we said that all those who want to be part of the exercise should go to our website. And so first you go to our website, and then you declare your position as to which area you want us to support with. Remember, apart from the enumerator and supervisor's role that I've talked about, we also have other roles, talking about IT officers who are also supporting us in the field, talking about data quality monitors who are also constantly monitoring the data quality that I talked about, and you have the district field supervisors who are also our technical people when it comes to the questionnaires. We have trained them on the questionnaire. They in fact trained the regional trainers. And so these are all people who express interest in some way in our bureau. And so we had about or more than 200,000 people applying. But as you rightly pointed out, we had set some standards in terms of educational qualification and in terms of your ability to use the tablet, and it may interest you to know that yes, you may have somebody who is very good, but because of that limitation of not being able to use the tablet, it becomes limited in terms of working with us. But let me say that, so we open this up to all Ghanaians, and people applied. And when you apply, we were looking for people coming from the localities. Remember, the census is happening at the district level. And so it's not a matter of taking somebody from, let's say, Accra, Kaneshi, to go and enumerate somebody at Fantiakwa South District in the Eastern region. And so we want people to come from the localities themselves. And therefore, two key considerations were considered here. One was looking at where you reside as an individual, and so we were picking the people from the localities. And then the other consideration is the language that you speak. Remember earlier I said most of the interviews usually is conducted in the local languages. And so in the locality that you reside, we want you to be able to speak and understand that language that is widely spoken within that locality, so that you'll be able to interact with the people and elicit the right information for us. So these were basically what we did. And when we got the number of applicants, we screened them based on the responses we received. And this screening or interviews were done at the district level by the District Census Implementation Committee. So at the national level, we have the Census Secretariat that is planning and making sure that we implement. We have similar arrangements at the regional and district levels. So at the regional level, we have the Regional Census Implementation Committees, and at the district level, we have the District Implementation Census Implementation Committees. And so these were the people who conducted the interviews, and based on the standards that we had set, they gave us those who qualify for the training. Let me add that we usually would train more people than we need. And that is exactly what we did for this training. And so for the training of enumerators and supervisors, what we did was to invite 76,500 people. Those are the numbers we put in the classroom, close to about 2,000 classrooms all over the country. And at the end of today's training, we are going to select about 70,000 people, as I mentioned earlier, to go to the field.
The just ended census, which was in 2010, there were 5 new models which were introduced into the 2010 population and housing census. That is disability, agriculture, ICT, and some others. What new model has been added to this 2021 population and housing census?
Okay, so thank you very much. So you also notice that apart from even introduction of questions, we have also expanded on some of the questions, and the way we have asked the questions for some of the questions have also changed. For instance, if you take toilet facility on sanitation, this is the first time that we trying to find out whether there's a toilet facility in the structure or the house that individuals live. Remember, there's this crusade trying by the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, trying to get to know whether people have toilet facilities in their homes. And that is the only way we'll be able to get this information. If you take the uses to which the structure is put. This is the first time that we are asking this question. So once we identify a particular individual structure, we want to find out the use to which this structure is put. And then if you take employment questions, the way we used to ask the employment questions has slightly changed as compared to the previous censuses. And if you take sanitation, again, questions that we are asking at the household level, you notice that we have expanded the questions to include how we are even disposing of refuse in our homes, whether um, we burn them, whether it is the truck compassion that pick them at the end of the day, or whether we throw them haphazardly or by what means. And in that same manner, we're talking about the toilet that is being used by the toilet facility that is being used by the household. You notice that this time around, we're looking at two important indicators that is talking about the user interface and the containment. So in the previous census, what we did was to ask the question in one, which toilet facility do you use? But now the ministry is drawing our attention to the fact that we need information about the containment of the toilet and also the user interface. And so we have separated the two. And then what is also new in the questionnaire, I can talk about getting questions on ownership of household assets. This is important for us because after the census, we plan to also measuring non-monetary poverty. We conduct Ghana Living Standard Survey every 7 years, 5 years on average, which helps us to measure poverty indices. But that is, we're getting that information from the perspective of consumption level. But we also have non-monetary policy, non-monetary measurement of poverty, which is also of interest to the UN. And these questions will help us to measure this indicator. And so briefly, this is what I can talk about, the newness in the, as far as the questions are concerned.
Yeah, so we now move on to the structures or the processes involved in this year's 2021 population and housing census. This week's on Sunday, that is 13th, you are doing listing of structures before you move on to enumeration and the other one too. So if you can walk us through what each of the steps means and what we are supposed to expect on each day.
Okay.
So starting with the listing of structures.
And cleaning of tablets, we group the trainees who were successful into groups, and then we deploy them into the field. Now, when we take them to the field, we are expecting them to first of all do listing, but the listing also takes a number of processes. First of all, you have to walk around their ears to be certain that they have found their boundaries. So that is what they will be doing on the first day, Sunday. It is important for them to do this because, as I indicated earlier, we don't want a situation where people will stray into other people's areas to avoid double counting. Every individual will have to be counted or enumerated once. And so we don't want a situation where two people are working in the same area, counting the same people. And so they need to get their boundaries right. And that is the canvassing that we talk about. Once they are certain of the boundary, then they will think about, in terms of planning, think about how they will do the listing. And so do you want to start from this end of your area, that end of your area? How do you want to be moving in between, and so on and so forth? And in doing so, they also publicize the census. And so that is what they will be doing the first day, distributing flyers and all that. And then the following day, they begin with the listing itself, which is first chalking or writing some unique census numbers on the walls. And so what they do is that they will write a number. So it begins with 2021 PHC, that is Population and Housing Census, with a slash. And then they will indicate a three-digit number, which has a meaning, of course, and then a slash. Then it ends with another four-digit number, which also has a meaning to us. So there are codes that we are assigning, which will be interpreted by us as we get the information. And so that is the beginning. So they will write on the walls, and then they enter into the house and take the GPS coordinates of the structure. So we are getting the GPS coordinates of all structures to be able to know that this is where we can find this structure and that is where we can find that structure. Now, when they have done that, then they speak to a member of the household, which will solicit basic information about the structure. So, for instance, we want to know the completion level of the structure. And so this one is being observed anyway. This one we are not asking. So the completion level, we want to know whether it is at the window level, whether it is at lintel level, whether it is a completed structure, and so on and so forth. And as I indicated earlier, we're asking some information as the use to which the structure is put, and whether there's a toilet facility within that structure. And so, for instance, so you can have varying responses. In some structures, you find that you find only one household. So here we are talking about either one person or a group of people who live together and consider one person as a head, and are consider themselves as one unit in doing things that I talked about. And here we want to do it or get it done by the 25th of June. So when they start on the 14th, 15th, by the 25th of June, we are done with this. And then we go into what we refer to as census night. So the census night is the night of 27th, so talking about midnight of 27th June 2021. And this is the reference point to all the questions that we'll be asking during the enumeration period. Remember, we're looking at a snapshot when we talk about population in Ghana. We're looking at a snapshot of the population in Ghana as at that point, which is the night of 27 June 2021. And so all the persons who spent that night in Ghana will be enumerated. And so we make noise around the date for people to be able to remember these dates, because when we come to your home, we are asking you where you spent the night. And so depending on where you spend the night, whether in your home, in a hotel, in a prison, in a hospital, in a school, or whatever, you tell us. Is with the fire service to make sure that they help us make noise on that night. And having bonfires in the individual localities and all that. So all that we'll be doing is to get people's attention to remember this date, so that when we ask you, you will make reference to that night and you'll be able to tell us where you were and be able to get to know where exactly we should enumerate you. So on that night, apart from these activities, we also will enumerate what we refer to as floating population. This floating population are people who may be traveling on that night for long distances, travelers. And so we may have people who may be traveling from Accra to Kumasi, Accra to Bolga, and so on and so forth. So that is a long distance journey, and that at the time that they set off, the census night will catch them up on the way. But we do it such that we don't, stop buses and vehicles on the way to do the enumeration. And so we already have arrangements with the transport operators to speak to them about this. And what we do is that before such buses will set off at the point of departure, we enumerate them. So there's a short questionnaire that we have designed to capture these people in terms of taking their information. And then, in addition to that, there are also some people that we can only enumerate them at night. I'm referring to people who may be sleeping or who sleep on people's in front of shops, in front of people's verandas, and so on and so forth. And we call them homeless household. They don't have homes. And so these are people who you can only get in the night. And so on that night, 27th June 2021, we will also enumerate these people. And then also, for people who will spend the census night in hotels, we're going to make sure that we cover them. So these are the three groups of population that we will cover them on census night. But when it comes to the enumeration of people who are in their homes and are in their institutions, their enumeration will start from the 28th, a day after the census night. So 28th June up to the 11th of July is when we'll do it. So it's a 2-week activity that we have devoted for the enumeration of the population within the conventional homes and in institutions.
Yeah, so you made mention of liaising with transport owners to get people who are traveling to very long distance to be enumerated before they take off. They do transits. How do you get to enumerate these people who will be going on a very long distance journey, but they'll be doing transits along the way?
Yeah, so as I said, we know where all these cars and buses, load their passengers. And so we have identified all these people. I talked about the homeless people. We have identified the sleeping places of all these people. And so it makes it easier for us to get to these places and arrange with them. So I wasn't specifically talking to the well-known transport operators, but I was talking in general about all transport operators.
After the census night, what next? Does it mean that the job is done? Or
No. So as I indicated in my earlier submission, after the census night, then we enter into the enumeration of households, those in households, or those we refer to as being in conventional homes, and those who will be found in stable institutions like the students that will be on our tertiary institutions, students who will be in secondary school institutions or even basic, prisons, cells, and hospitals. And so within the 2 weeks is when we then target these people and make sure that we get everybody. And so each enumerator has an assigned area, as I mentioned earlier on, and he's covering an average population of 750 in his or her area. And so we, based on the trial census that we have conducted, we think that within the 2 weeks, each person should be able to cover that number of people and structures within the. By now, they have done the listing of structures, and so depending on the information that they provided during the listing exercise, will then tell them whether they are using any of the 5 questionnaires that I talked about. No, I have mentioned that there are 5 different questionnaires that we are using to.
After the enumeration of people and also housing, what next? Does the work ends there?
No, so the biggest challenge then becomes the results, the release of the results. So then after counting, we want to put all these pieces of information from the 70,000 people together and come up with a report. And so we are giving ourselves 3 months after end of full data collection to be able to come out. In the past, because of the paper that we were using, you will notice that we were not coming out as fast as possible, because even before 2010, it was data entry, and so it usually took some time, and that is when we were also looking at the data quality and all that. But this time around, data quality issues are being monitored real time. As the data comes, you have the data quality monitors who are drawing our attention to the quality of the data and so on and so forth. And so that is what is making us come out faster than we have done in the past. 2010, what we did was to come out 6 months after the data collection. And this was even possible because we used scannable technology, which was an improvement in terms of the processes over the previous censuses. This time around, using the tablets, we think that we should be able to do it within 3 months.
Yeah, so you mentioned of procurement of gadgets and also hiring of officers to undertake this exercise. Can we put a figure to how much the service is spending to undertake this very important exercise?
Well, for the entire census, we are spending 521.3 million Ghana cedis. Before the COVID, the budget was 477 million Ghana cedis, and that was before 2020. And when COVID reared its head in 2020, we had to revise the budget because we needed to make sure that we also observe all the protocols as far as the COVID is concerned. And so buying of PPPs, sanitizers, the training, we had to vary the way we were doing training. And so in addition to the face-to-face training, we introduced virtual training and all that. And so that is what shot up the budget to 521.3 million that I talked about.
We find ourselves in a very not too pleasant situation. COVID-19 is raging havoc in many parts of the country. You also mentioned about purchasing PPEs because these officers cannot be exposed to this very deadly disease. What kind of PPEs are these personnel receiving, and how many is each personnel entitled to? If you can give us the figures.
So what I can talk about is the sanitizers, the face masks. Then we also bought tissues, the how do you call the gun, the thermometer gun, and all the things that matter in Veronica buckets, and then we're giving each individual one per day, because you need to change every day, and so it wasn't giving one to each person, but then depending on the number of days we gave out, but we were not giving it in bulk. As and when we get into the activity, we give out.
Ja, thank you very much, Mr. Osu, granting us this exclusive interview, sharing with us some of the very important information on their preparation or readiness ahead of the 2021 population housing census. And we are very grateful.